Joining me now, someone who is very pleased by what took place today. She was there with the President of the United States. Lauren Miller is a member of the Independent Women's Forum, an ambassador for them, and a professional golfer. Lauren, good to have you with us.
Thank you so much for having me on this historic day.
What was it like? What was it like being at the White House and seeing the President sign this executive order?
Truly a once in a lifetime opportunity. Nothing that I ever thought that I would see in my lifetime. I definitely imagined that I would just be hitting a little white ball around a field and not having to stand up for men playing in women's sports. But here we are, and just incredibly proud of all of the efforts that have taken place by everyone involved. So many different people have made this happen, and we have made a huge stride forward in protecting women's sports, protecting women's spaces, and I'm incredibly honored that I get to be a part of today.
It's pretty cool. Lauren, tell us, you've encountered this problem of men trying to cheat in your sport. What happened with you?
Yes, this landed right on my doorstep after losing in a playoff in January of 2024 to trans-identifying male golfer Haley Davidson. And from that moment on, seeing the national news and just national attention that it drew, I knew that from that moment forward, if I sat back and did nothing, I would only be enabling women's sport or enabling men competing in women's sports, and that is not something that I could stand by. And so I've received so much strength and support from those around me, especially the likes of Independent Women Forum and their ambassadors. And so moving from then, I knew I needed to do something that was productive and helpful, and they have essentially empowered me and my peers to really make a change. We've seen great improvement with women's golf. There's still some room to go, but we are winning. We are taking women's sports back, and we are protecting young girls' futures, and that's incredibly exciting.
In golf in particular, do I understand correctly that that at the LPGA has made it so that men are not allowed to compete anymore?
So the new policy that has come into play for this upcoming year is that men who transition pre-puberty would still be allowed to compete, but any post-puberty individuals would not. So by no means is the policy perfect. We want it to be XX only, women only, period, dot.
Yes.
There is no need for this gray area, these blurred lines. It leaves it open for, potential lawsuits to come, but at the end of the day, it was at least a step forward.
Yeah.
But it's definitely still some room to improve.
Yeah, no, big time, especially because that policy actually incentivizes abusing children at an even earlier age in order to make it so that they're eligible in the LPGA. It's actually really terrible. And I hope they come to their senses. Do you sense that things are changing in a positive direction here, Lauren, not just with the president's executive order today, but with the broader awareness of this problem?
Absolutely. I think across the board, even before this issue, became a huge topic with regards to the election this year, I truly have felt that the general public was in 80 to 90% agreement, but it just wasn't being talked about, or we weren't being loud enough. And that silent majority was not being so silent. That loud minority was overpowering the silent majority. And so now we are coming forward. We are using our voices. We are making them known.
Yeah.
And I really think that the consensus now is being spoken. And we're saying that we're not going to continue to sit back anymore and let these outrageous policies bulldoze the work of all female athletes, current and former. So
yes.
I really do think the tide is turning, and we are making some great changes. We still have room to go. We need the Senate to push this through and make this into law to protect this more than just these 4 years. But I think having the government, having President Trump really making this a priority is certainly helping the rest of the country want to follow suit.
Lauren, I don't know the rest of your politics here. I know obviously you care about this issue, but I will say that one thing I've encountered with young women, namely my daughter. My young daughter is a swimmer. She loves swimming. if there's any issue that has perfectly directed her towards sanity when it comes to her politics, to the extent that she has any, it's
Mm,
this one.
mhm.
When I bring this up and I talk about, hey, there's some people who think boys should compete against you in your sport. She's like, that's crazy. She said, she looks at me
Right.
and she instantly is able to sort through this. And this is one of those things, Lauren, where I was, when I was younger, I wasn't sure. I'm like, when do I introduce this to my kid, that this is even happening in real life, that people are
Mm,
attempting to do
mhm.
this? And I am so I'm so personally happy that we talked about it, because it instantly set her on the right track. She just looked at that and
Mm.
goes, "That's nuts." And so I think, Lauren, I think kids understand this in an innate way, well beyond in the case of many adults who have really distorted this into something unrecognizable.
Oh, 1000%. This is so simple. This is common sense. And I think that's kind of why the majority of Americans are in agreement, but the majority of Americans are going about their days and working their jobs, and they see this from afar and they just think it's silly. Why would why should we even be having to be brave and courageous and stand up for this
Yeah.
when it is such a simple issue? Men and women are different. That's okay. We should be celebrating those differences,
Yes.
um, rather than And it's been very very interesting to see. But I think more and more people are waking up and saying enough is enough. They do not want to see their daughters. I do not want to see my niece have to compete against a male at any level, and people are sick of it. And
Yeah.
so finally, we're finding our voice, and we're using our voice, and we're recognizing the strength in numbers, and that when we stand together, we're pretty tough to beat.
Lauren Miller, you're a professional golfer. What kind of blowback have you received for speaking up on behalf of sanity here? One of the things I've been struck by is that there are women who are standing up, thank goodness. Not the most, sometimes not the most famous women in sports. A lot of them have
Mhm.
actually been, let's be honest, cowards when it comes to this issue.
Mm.
They don't
Mhm.
want to imperil whatever, financial structure that they're benefiting from. But there have been women like yourself who are competing at the highest level in female golf, who are speaking up against this. Why is it that at least in the past, have been so few women willing to step out and stake their reputations on defending reality?
Yeah, I think you touched on it, and that financial piece is definitely plays a part, as well as because it hasn't hit women's golf at quite the highest level. I think women, even though they probably agree with me, they just haven't been willing to stick their neck out on an issue that hasn't directly impacted them yet. Um, but we can't wait for it to come to us and then say something.
Yeah.
We have to be proactive about this. That's the only way that we're going to continue to keep women's sports safe. So for me, it was, once it came right on my doorstep, I said, I can no longer just sit back and let this happen. I do not want anyone else to experience this. But that definitely came after a lot of prayer and discernment, and saying that this is way bigger than me. This is about, the future of women's golf as a whole. And, any small, comments or disgust, honestly, for me, it's been very minimal. I feel like the golf community is very united on this topic. I have received so much support from my peers, and that has continued to help encourage me. And we've seen the support. We initiated through Independent Women last year this letter that we sent to the LPGA, the USGA, and the IGF, saying and urging them to look at the science. And we received over 275 signatures from other female professional golfers, all in agreement with us. And so it is out there. Girls have just been a little bit more timid, but since the policy change, we are starting to see more and more women can use their voices, and hopefully that continues to grow, and they can recognize just the true impact that they have. And when they speak up, it's for something incredibly meaningful and rewarding, and it's going to last a lot longer than any trophy could.
Yeah. All right. Well, Lauren Miller, I'm so grateful you joined us today. And one last question for you. I know that you're opposed to men playing in your sport, but would you make an exception to play a round of golf with President Trump?
I would love nothing more than to have the opportunity to play with President Trump. He's definitely got quite the game, as well as his granddaughter Kai. Incredibly excited to follow her career. Absolutely would cherish an opportunity to get to play with our president, and So who knows?
Who
Maybe that would
knows?
be in the cards. That'd be a special day.
That would be cool. That'd be very cool. Lauren Miller from the Independent Women's Forum and Pro Golf. Thank you very much for your time today. Congrats on being there for a great moment.